Okay, so I just finished my box jump and back squat workout. It was 4 rounds. I started off with 7 reps at 70% of my 1 rep max back squat, and then I went to 7 box jumps at 40 inches. So I like to include workouts like this, something that's not too heavy but challenging enough and I can maintain good form. And then the box jumps, I wanted to maintain a height that I wasn't gonna fail every round, and also that was gonna be challenging enough after the box squats to get my legs going. All right, so we're gonna go over the conventional deadlift. So the conventional deadlift is with your hands outside of your feet as you're lifting the bar off the floor. All right, so we wanna make sure that your feet are about hip width apart and no wider than shoulder width apart. The reason for that is because we want to be able to push through the heels, which engages the hamstrings and the glutes. And then we also want to make sure that the knees are not caving inward. So let me demonstrate a couple reps here. So driving through the heels, knees come back, knees are pointed straight ahead. Using the hamstrings and the glutes to lift off the floor. Okay, another thing is we want to make sure our hands are about shoulder width apart. So the narrower you go with your hands, the longer you're making your arms, so the less range of motion you guys have to go through. If you have to go too wide right here, like a snatch grip deadlift, or even a little bit outside the shoulders, look how much higher you have to bring the bar up, and then you're pulling a lot more with your arms versus driving through the legs. So a couple common mistakes is bringing your feet too wide. So watch what happens when my feet are outside the shoulders. My knees are gonna cave in, and that's gonna disengage the hamstrings. Another mistake is having one hand underneath the bar. Now, if your grip strength is too weak, go with a hook grip where your thumb is wrapped underneath your middle finger and your index finger. When you do an underhand grip, you end up pulling too much through that bicep, and you risk straining this bicep because we're not meant to pull that much weight up with one arm. So we want to keep it as even as possible. That's going to keep your spine nice and straight. It's also going to keep you pulling through each arm evenly. All right, another common fault is having your feet too narrow. So when your feet are inside your hips, what happens is your weight shifts on the outside of your feet and you're not driving through the heels. You're also going to be pushing your knees out over the toes, which is going to put a lot of pressure on your knee joints. Here's some tips for box jumps. So first off, you want to make sure that you guys are about 1 foot away from the box. If you're too close, you're going to hit your hands on the way up as you guys are jumping, or your knees into the box. So say about 1 foot away from the box, feet are about shoulder width apart. When you go up to jump, swing your hands back so you're driving up with your arms as well as your hips. And then when you land, try to land with a wider stance. That gives you a little more room to get down nice and low. Then, if you guys are doing box jumps in a workout, there's a couple different ways we can do those. So either you can step down, this is going to save the impact on your calves and your knees, or you guys can rebound. So as you guys are jumping down, you're going to push through the toes, bend your knees and your hips, and go straight into the next rep. One thing to be conscious of when you guys are doing rebounding box jumps is making sure that you guys warm up properly beforehand. If you guys don't warm up properly beforehand and your calves and Achilles are really tight, then you could risk an injury. So great ways to warm up would be doing some calf raises, some small bounding jumps, stuff like that to get the blood flowing in the ankles and calves. All right, so we're going to go over tips for the back squat. So when you start, you want to make sure your hands are outside your shoulders and you have a tight grip on the bar. So you're going to be pushing up on the bar with your arms to push your traps up to create a good shelf for the bar to rest on. So when you guys go down, make sure your elbows are slightly behind the bar. If they're too high up, it's going to push your chest forward and you're going to be using your lower back. So push up with the arms, squeeze your core before you start, and then without holding your breath, you're going to squat down, drive for the heels, try and get those hips below the knees. As you're squatting down, try to avoid pushing your knees out too much, as that's going to push your weight onto the outside of your feet. So you want to bring those knees back, squeeze your core, and then drive to the heels. So we don't want those knees to come in, but try to avoid pushing them out too wide. Another thing is if you have a really narrow stance, it's going to make it hard to stay on the heels. So make sure you go about shoulder width or a little bit outside of that, wherever that feels the most comfortable for you.